There are days when you look at your life and do not understand. You work, you strive, you pray, you try to do everything right, and yet prosperity seems to be kept in a place where you have no access, as if there were a vault with everything you need and deserve, and the key to this vault were with someone else, or in another time, or in a condition that you have not yet fulfilled, and that no one has explained to you what it is. This feeling has a name, it has a cause, and it has a resolution. What I am going to reveal to you today is that this vault is real, that it has been opened, that the order has already been given, and that the angel of prosperity who is in possession of the key is waiting for a single thing from your part to deliver to you what belongs to you. But pay attention. What he is waiting for is not more effort. It is not more sacrifice. It is not a greater promise. It is not a longer fast. It is something much more specific, much deeper, and much less obvious than any of those things. And when I reveal what it is, you will understand why you waited so long, and why this time of waiting was not punishment, it was preparation. Stay until the end, because the second half of this video contains the complete protocol for you to receive what was kept for you, and I need you to be present in every word. First, let me situate you in the spiritual field from which we are speaking, because the word angel sometimes generates very different reactions depending on each person's tradition, and I want what I am going to say to reach everyone, regardless of which spiritual path you walk. In Brazilian Catholicism, angels are messengers and guardians assigned to each person, spiritual creatures who operate between the divine and human planes with specific functions of protection, guidance, and provision. In Kardecist Spiritism, guide spirits and protectors fulfill an equivalent role, being evolved spirits who accompany and assist the incarnated spirit on its journey. In Afro-Brazilian traditions, the Orixás and the Worker Exus are spiritual forces that intermediate access to blessings and material prosperity. In traditions of Jewish origin, angels are literally department heads of the universe, each with a specific cosmic function, and the angel responsible for abundance and provision has an explicit presence in the scriptures. Different traditions. The same fundamental understanding. There are spiritual forces that operate in favor of human prosperity, forces that have the power, disposition, and mission for this, and that operate in cooperation with the internal state and the choices of the human being they are assisting. Science does not call these forces angels, but it recognizes that there is something that functions in an analogous way at the level of the field. Quantum physics has identified that the universe is not composed of solid and predictable matter. It is composed of probability fields that collapse into reality according to the observer. In simpler language, the reality that manifests around a person is deeply related to the internal state of that person, to what they expect, to what they believe, to the frequency they emit. The vault of prosperity exists in the spiritual field and manifests in the material field. And the key to this vault is not additional physical effort. It is field alignment. It is correspondence between what you cry out for on the outside and what you believe on the inside. Now I need to ask you a direct question, and I want you to answer with honesty, not with the answer you think is right, but with the one that is true. When you think about being prosperous, when you imagine your life with real abundance, with financial tranquility, with needs met and dreams realized, what do you feel besides hope? Because for most people, especially those over 35 years old who have gone through repeated cycles of attempt and financial frustration, alongside hope there exists a weight, a doubt that is not easily named, a feeling that it would be too good, that it will probably go wrong again, that you have tried before, that people like you do not get there, that God must have other plans, that deep down you do not know if you deserve it. This weight is what blocks the key. It is not God withholding what is yours. It is not a lack of effort. It is not chronological bad luck. It is the distance between what you ask for on your knees and what you truly believe, at the deepest level of your nervous system, that is possible for you. And while this distance exists, the field cannot close. The vault is open. The key is with the angel. But the door between the spiritual field and the material field remains blocked by the internal conflict between declared faith and deep belief. This is not criticism, it is diagnosis. And correct diagnosis is the first step of any real cure. Let me explain how this conflict installs itself, because it does not come from nowhere, and understanding the origin is what gives you power to transform it. The neuroscience of brain development has demonstrated something that revolutionized psychology in recent decades. Most of the beliefs that govern adult behavior were installed before 7 years of age, before critical thinking was developed enough to filter what entered, before the child had the vocabulary or maturity to question what they heard, saw, and felt around them. This means that beliefs about money, about deservingness, about what is possible for someone like you, were written in your internal operating system when you still had no way to verify them. They were written by the phrases you heard repeatedly in childhood, by the stories they told in your family, by what you saw the adults around you do or not do, by the economic environment in which you grew up, by the relationship the people you loved had with money. And now, 30, 40, 50 years later, you operate from these beliefs as if they were absolute truths about reality, as if they were data from the universe, when in fact they are data from a specific environment, from a specific time, from specific people who also had their own limiting beliefs passed forward. The transformative question is, are these beliefs mine, or were they installed in me before I had a choice? And the most honest answer for most people is that they were not chosen, they were inherited. And just as you can inherit an old piece of furniture that does not match the new apartment where you are living now, you may have inherited beliefs that do not match the life you are trying to build. The difference is that the furniture you can throw away or give to someone. The belief requires a more sophisticated process of identification, confrontation, and replacement. But it is equally possible. And it is exactly this process that the protocol of the keys will teach you. Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell now. This type of content goes beyond the superficial. It goes to the root. And that is why it produces real results in the people who apply it. Activate the bell so as not to miss any new video. I'm going to tell you about 3 types of vaults that exist in the spiritual field of prosperity. Because there is no single universal blockage, there is a specific blockage for each type of person, and identifying your type is what will determine which key you need to use. The first type is the vault of deservingness. This vault is blocked by the belief that you are not good enough, dedicated enough, spiritual enough, deserving enough to receive what you ask for. Whoever carries this blockage usually came very close to something great and sabotaged it at the last moment, or receives well and spends compulsively before accumulating, as if unconsciously trying to return to the level where they feel safe, or feels a genuine physical discomfort when things are very well, as if waiting for the next blow. The key to this vault is the reconstitution of identity. It is the work of rewriting, from the inside out, the answer to the question, who am I and what do I deserve? Not as a hollow affirmation, as a deep process of confrontation and replacement of the beliefs that are at the root. The second type is the vault of lineage. This vault is blocked by patterns transmitted by the family over generations, poverty that became identity, economic humiliation that became a narrative of how the world works, fear of standing out, because standing out is dangerous, collective belief that wealth corrodes character. The person who carries this blockage usually has a clear awareness that they want more, but every time they advance beyond a certain level, something pulls them back, like an invisible elastic band that does not let them go further than the lineage went. The key to this vault is the resignification of the lineage. It is the work of honoring the ancestors while releasing oneself from their patterns, of saying with the heart, they did what they could. I do what I can. And what I can is more, because they arrived first and opened the way. The third type is the vault of betrayal. This vault is blocked by a specific wound of financial betrayal, a partner who disappeared with the money, a family member who took what was yours, an investment that was sabotaged by someone of trust, a job from which you were unfairly fired. This wound created a deep belief that prosperity is dangerous because it attracts traitors, that having more is exposing oneself more, that it is safer not to grow too much. The key to this vault is the healing of the specific financial wound. It is the work of separating the past event from future possibilities, of recognizing that what that person or situation did was real and was wrong, without generalizing to the entire field of prosperity as an unsafe place. Which of these three types resonates most with you? Do you feel which is your vault? Write in the comments 1, 2, or 3, just the number. This will help me understand what the audience of this channel needs most, and will help you name where your work begins. Now I need to tell you about Abraham, not the infantilized story that most know, the real story with all its psychological and spiritual depth. Abraham was a man who had received a promise of prosperity and abundance of proportions that no human had received before. God had told him that he would make him the father of a multitude of nations, that from him would come a progeny more numerous than the stars of the sky and the sand of the sea, that all the families of the earth would be blessed through him. A promise of a completely open vault, abundance without limit, legacy without end. But between the promise and the manifestation, Abraham waited 25 years. From the moment he received the promise until the birth of Isaac, 25 years passed, and during this time he did not remain inactive waiting, but he was also not without doubt. The Bible is honest about this. Abraham and Sarah tried to resolve it on their own with Hagar. They tried to anticipate the promise with their own human resources, and they produced a complication that humanity feels to this day. But the Bible also says something extraordinary about Abraham's faith. In Romans chapter 4, Paul writes that Abraham, against all hope, in hope believed, that he considered not his own body, which was as dead, nor the barrenness of Sarah's womb, and he did not waver in unbelief at the promise of God, but was strengthened in faith, giving glory to God, being fully convinced that what God had promised he was powerful also to perform. Against all hope, in hope he believed. This phrase is the most precise description I know of the internal state necessary to receive what was promised. It is not naive optimism. It is conviction that maintains itself when external evidence says the opposite. It is believing in the open vault when the bank account still says closed. It is acting as someone who is in the process of receiving, not as someone who is waiting to see if they will receive. It is the difference between faith as passive hope and faith as an active posture of one who already knows what is coming. Abraham received the key when he was 99 years old, and Sarah was 90, when biologically the window had closed decades ago, when no specialist, no doctor, no human logic would give any possibility for that promise to be fulfilled. And it was exactly then that the vault opened, when the only possible explanation was the supernatural. Your vault may be exactly at this point, where human logic has already given up, where plans B and C have failed, where you are looking at the impossible. It is precisely there that the order to the angel is usually given. Now I want to bring something that will surprise those who think that spirituality and finances are separate subjects, because the neuroscience of behavioral finances confirms with data what spirituality teaches with faith. The field of research called behavioral economic studies why people make financial decisions that contradict their own interest, and the findings are revealing. Professor Shlomo Benartzi of UCLA, one of the greatest researchers in the area, identified that most people make financial decisions from two cognitive systems. The rational system, which analyzes data, calculates risks, and seeks the best long-term result, and the emotional system, which operates from memory, fear, unconscious associations, and old patterns. The emotional system is much faster and much more powerful than the rational. It makes the decision before the rational finishes processing, and it is governed exactly by the beliefs installed in childhood, by the financial traumas of the past, by the patterns inherited from the lineage. This means that you can have the best financial plan in the world, the best coach, the best investment course, and still make decisions that contradict that plan, because the emotional system is operating from a programming older and more powerful than any new information that entered. Changing the financial result without changing the underlying emotional programming is like trying to change the destination of a car without touching the steering wheel. You can accelerate, but you go in the same direction. The vault of prosperity is opened when the two dimensions are aligned, the spiritual and the psychological, faith and deep belief, what you ask for and what you really expect to receive. When this alignment happens, the field closes in a way that external results begin to reflect the internal state in a way that seems, from the outside, almost miraculous. It is not a miracle. It is alignment. But real alignment, when it happens, produces results that any outside observer would call a miracle. Like this video now, because if you have reached this point, you are seeking this alignment for real, and this simple gesture is a way to signal to yourself that you are committed to the process. The protocol of the keys. It is what you came to seek, and it is what you will receive now. There are 7 keys. Each one opens a specific layer of the vault, and each one has a corresponding practice that you can start today. The first key is the naming of the limiting belief. You cannot transform what you cannot see. So the first work is to identify with precision what is the belief that is blocking your field of prosperity. Not generically, specifically. It could be, money never stays with me. It could be, for me to win more, someone has to lose. It could be, the rich do not go to heaven. It could be, I was not born for this. It could be, when things are good, something bad is coming. What is yours? You recognize it when you feel a tightening, when thinking about having much more than you have now. This tightening is the address of the belief. The second key is the investigation of the origin. For each belief you identified, ask, where did this come from? Who said this first? In what context? When you identify that that belief was said by someone who was afraid, who was suffering, who was operating from their own limitation, it loses part of the power it has over you. It becomes what it really is, the perspective of someone at a specific moment, in a specific context, not a universal law. The third key is the contradiction with evidence. For each limiting belief, you seek real evidence that contradicts it. People who came from contexts similar to yours and prospered, moments in your own history when the belief was not confirmed, data that contradicts the narrative. The brain seeks confirmation of what it believes. When you intentionally direct it to contrary evidence, you begin to create space for a new narrative. The fourth key is the declaration of prosperous identity. This is different from generic positive affirmation. It is a specific declaration about who you are, not about what you want to have. Not, I will have a lot of money, but I am someone whose purpose generates real value in the world. I am someone who knows how to receive with gratitude. I am someone who uses resources with wisdom and generosity. Identity comes before reality. You can only consistently have what corresponds to who you believe you are. The fifth key is aligned financial action, small but consistent, which demonstrates to your nervous system and to the spiritual field that you are operating as someone in the process of prosperity, not as someone waiting to start when they have more. It could be a symbolic amount saved per week. It could be an hour dedicated per week to the development of a skill that increases your value. It could be a business conversation you had been postponing. The action does not need to be large, it needs to be real and consistent, because consistency is the language of seriousness in the spiritual field. The sixth key is specific financial gratitude, not thanking for money in a generic way, thanking for specific flows of provision that already exist in your life, however small they seem, for the electricity bill you managed to pay, for today's food, for the salary that came in, for the bill that came out smaller than expected. Specific gratitude trains the perceptive field to identify abundance where before it only saw scarcity. And what you perceive as abundant, you create conditions to multiply. And the seventh key is intentional donation. This key may seem contradictory when you are in scarcity, but it is precisely why it is the most powerful. When you donate, even if little, even if symbolic, you break the cycle of contraction that the scarcity mentality creates. You are saying with concrete action, I have enough to give. And this state, the state of one who has enough to give, is the state that magnifies the field of reception. Spiritual traditions have taught this principle for millennia. Behavioral neuroscience confirms that giving activates brain circuits of well-being and a sense of abundance that no purchase for oneself can activate with the same intensity. 7 keys, 7 practices, 7 doors of the vault being opened one by one. I need to talk to you about timing. Because one of the questions that inevitably arises after all this is, when? When will the vault be completely open? When will the prosperity that is being prepared arrive in a visible and concrete way? The honest answer is that the exact timing is not at the disposal of any human being. It is not with the pastor. It is not with the priest. It is not with the therapist. It is not with me. The timing is in the spiritual field and obeys a logic that goes beyond our linear perception of time. But there is something that spiritual tradition and behavioral science agree on regarding what accelerates the process. It is consistency without dependence on immediate results. It is practicing the 7 keys, not because you are monitoring the results daily and measuring if it is working, but because you decided that this is your state, that this is the person you chose to be, that prosperity is not an event you are waiting for. It is a field you are cultivating. When you reach this place, the place where practice has become identity and identity has become a permanent state, the external field begins to respond in a way that seems accelerated, because the previous slowness was internal resistance. And when the resistance yields, what was dammed up flows with a speed that seems sudden from the outside, but is only the natural result of a field finally unobstructed. The angel of prosperity is not waiting for you to deserve more. He is waiting for you to believe that you deserve it, that your internal field says the same thing your mouth says, that the yes you speak in prayer be the same yes that resonates in the deepest layers of your belief. When this happens, the key is delivered. The vault is open, and what entered was already waiting for you. Write in the comments now a declaration. Just one phrase that begins with I am. Complete it with what you are choosing to be from today regarding your prosperity. I am prosperous. I am abundant. I am a channel of wealth. I am someone who receives with gratitude. Any phrase that resonates true for you. Not because the declaration in the comments will magically open the vault, but because the act of writing in public what you are choosing to be is an act of commitment that your nervous system registers differently than internal thought. It is making real in the physical field something that is still being built in the internal field. I'm here. I read every comment, and what you write will be part of a collective field of intention that has its own weight. Reaching the end, I want to leave you with a perspective that integrates everything we have seen. The vault of prosperity is not closed because you did not dedicate yourself enough. It is not closed because God does not wish you well. It is not closed because the universe decided that others deserve more. It is closed by the distance between what you ask and what you believe, between the mouth that prays and the heart that doubts, between the Sunday prayer and the Monday belief. And this distance is not a failure of character. It is unexamined inheritance. It is unhealed wound. It is unrecognized pattern. It is something that can be transformed with intention, with practice, and with the courage to look honestly at what is inside before expecting the outside to change. The angel of prosperity received the order. The order was given when you were born with the purpose you have, when you were endowed with the gifts you have, when you were placed on the path you are walking, even with all the detours and stumbles. The order is older than your most recent financial problem, and it remains active regardless of how long it took. What you need to do is your part, not the part of additional effort that is already exhausting you. The internal part, the part of alignment, the part of becoming on the inside what you are asking to arrive on the outside. When you do this, when the internal field and the field of intention meet, the vault not only opens, it overflows. And what comes out of it is not just money, it is peace, it is purpose. It is the feeling that your life is finally moving in the direction you always knew it should go. This is the open vault. This is the gift the angel carries, and he is waiting for you now. Subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. Share this video with someone you feel is in a prosperity blockage and who is seeking to understand why effort is not being enough to change the picture. Because sometimes the greatest turn does not come from more effort. It comes from understanding where the blockage really is. Until the next video. And remember, the vault was opened, the key is on the way. What you do with this moment determines when it reaches your hands. Are you ready to receive?